Hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the show. Kath Langman here, your host, as per usual. I am recording this mid-June, and this week I did something slightly out of the ordinary, and I released a second little shorty episode. I'm not sure if you have given that a listen as of yet. Funny thing was, I was kind of making mention of Reserve Bank of Australia's rate rises and how that might impact our businesses. And then, of course, a day after recording it, the RBA released their decision to hold those rates for this particular cycle. I'm sure we've all breathed out a sigh of relief rather, and I have certainly noticed a few more end of financial year sale promotions launching today. I highly doubt that's accidental. Anywho, different topic for today. I've spent the last couple of weeks being your customer, or at least a customer for many other businesses. Well, not that many. And so I'm not talking about being a metaphorical customer of yours. I've actually been doing some end of financial year shopping, window shopping, and actual shopping. I had a bit of a list of things that I really wanted to buy, and actually, a couple of them were things that I needed to buy. That's always the worst, isn't it? Where you have to free up some of your hard-earned cash for something you need, but you don't necessarily want to spend money on it. Anyway, I went shopping the way so many of us now shop in 2026. And somewhere around day 3 of this process, I was watching myself doing it, and I realized I was kind of a walking case study for all of the things that I've been sharing and teaching and doing with clients over the last several months. And also that almost none of the brands courting me with their meta ads understood what was actually happening to them. So, great case study. Of course, I always like to use what's going on in the moment as fodder for this podcast. And so today I'm going to take you inside my own buying brain for a fortnight, because what I did with my money and with my purchase decision behavior is exactly what your customer is likely doing with his or hers right now as well. And if you understand all of this, there really is such an amazing opportunity for you at the top of your product category. So here's what was on my list, or at least there's 4 things I'm going to talk about today that were on my list. 1, a new frying pan. This is one of those boring need to have rather than want to have. It sounds really simple, but it's not all that simple in my case. It has to work on an induction cooktop. I want it to be free of Teflon and all of the other family of forever chemicals, because I really don't want to be seasoning my family's dinner with anything ending in fluoro, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And it also had to be really big because I have a large-ish family. I mean, there's 5 of us, but 3 of them are really big eaters, athletes. And it had to survive really being used and abused twice a day because of said athletes. They want to have 6 million eggs for breakfast every day and then me cooking dinner. And I also want it to last for years. I don't want to be replacing this thing every year. Second was a kombucha kit, because apparently this is who I am now, into gut health. Of course, a big one, naturally. I can't do anything by halves in this house. And with this purchase, I'm a complete beginner. 3 was a yogurt making kit. Same story, has to be large, no idea what I'm doing. And then 4, linen pajamas. I'm going to get a little bit personal, but not spicy. So don't worry. But we're going to come back to the PJs a bit later in this storytelling. So 4 pretty ordinary purchases. Every single brand hoping to win them was about to be put through the gauntlet they probably didn't even know was about to happen. And of course, it started for most of them with an ad. Actually, I still do wonder whether you verbalize these things anywhere near your phone or your computer. And Meta hears you and then starts showing you some ads. Anywho, started with an ad. Most of these ads that I was looking at were really beautiful ones or clever ones, ones that stopped my thumb scroll in some way, shape, or form. And the first thing I want you to sit with, because this is the thing that's a bit uncomfortable sometimes, is that not one of those ads sold me anything. Not one. They were trying, but ultimately the ads did do their job. They stopped the scroll and they got my click. And then the ads handed me off to a process that the brands had almost no control over. Not no control, but almost. So the ad is kind of the audition, but it's never closing the sale. Because the moment something caught my eye, I did what every considered buyer now does without really even thinking about it. I went looking for more of the truth. So I opened up dozens of tabs in my Chrome browser. I read loads of reviews, not the glossy ones just existing on the brand's own websites, but brutally honest ones on other platforms. Trustpilot, product review. I, went right down into the Reddit rabbit hole, because Reddit is where a lot of people say what they actually think these days. I searched these brands up on TikTok and other, YouTube and just wherever I could find people talking about them. And I I literally was watching YouTube videos of frying pans, and that is a genre. I asked friends and I put it to the WhatsApp group chat. And I did, frankly, an embarrassing amount of searching about how to make kombucha for beginners before I'd bought a single thing. And then I did the thing that 5 years ago would have sounded kind of like science fiction. I opened up Google's AI and I started having a conversation with it. I told it things like, regarding the frying pan, has induction, no forever chemicals, it has to be really big, has to last for years. It's for a family of big eaters who are going to use it twice a day. And I asked it to compare my options and present the best selection. And when it came back with a brand that that I'm frankly trying to replace right now, I pushed back. I said, no, not that one. It didn't last for me. Tell me what else. And it adjusted and it narrowed and it got way more specific. And we went back and forth like I was briefing a very patient personal shopper until it handed me my perfect fit. And there was one suggestion I pushed back on pretty much all of these conversations with Google's AI, and that was the budget-friendly option. And look, I don't necessarily do that for all my shopping because, it's not like I'm not like Smaug the dragon from The Hobbit. So The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings? Oh my gosh. But really what I'm trying to do is to spend less over time. I don't want to be replacing things all the time. And I get that the AI is forever trying to be helpful by waving things like the cheapest pick at me. Sometimes the cheapest is genuinely the right call, but I've been around for long enough to know that cheap that doesn't last is actually the most expensive thing that you can buy. And I don't think in sticker price anymore because of that. I think in cost per use. So a $40 frying pan that warps and gets binned within 6 months isn't going to be cheaper than the $200 pan that I'll still be cooking on in a decade. Ultimately, it's wildly more expensive once you do the actual sums. So every time the AI offered me a bargain that I knew was a false economy, I pushed back. No, I've done that. It didn't last. Show me the one that will. Cost per use, not sticker price. That's the psychology that many premium buyers live and die by in 5 words. Now, here's the part. Oh, gosh, another siren passing. I don't know if you can hear that. Here's the part that made the marketer in me sit up. When that AI was working, I was watching the logos flash across the top of, I was doing this on my mobile, across the top of the screen as it went searching. It was going through, I could recognize a lot of these logos: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube, Reddit, product review, Trustpilot, blog after blog, expert after expert. So it was clearly not checking in one place. It was checking everywhere all at once in literal seconds. And what I was watching actually has a name. It's called Query Fan Out. And Google has confirmed this is exactly how their AI search works now. You ask one question, and behind the scenes, it doesn't run just one search. It fans your question and your sub questions out into 9 or 10 or probably even more related searches all at once across every kind of source. So, best induction frying pan quietly becomes, is this pan PFAS free? And does this pan warp? And will it last me 10 years? And best non-toxic cookware Australia, and how long does this brand last? And this brand versus that brand. A whole, you know, cohort of little research projects running on my behalf before I ever saw a single answer. And then it stitched the best, most credible pieces together into a recommendation that was personalized just for me. And I think, the bit that should change how all of you and all of us should think of this, the brands it recommended absolutely, or the ultimate one that I went for, definitely was not the one that was ranking number one on Google. There's Australian research from this year that found almost half the pages that AI cited weren't even in the traditional top 10 search results. They got pulled in because they just had the right answer to one of those little fanned out sub questions sitting on the right platform, formatted in the right way that these AIs can crawl and make sense of just at the exact moment that the AI went looking. It could have been a genuinely helpful Reddit thread or a YouTube review that addressed the precise worry, or a blog post that answered, is this safe for XYZ, in plain English. English for me, obviously. Those brands didn't win because they outranked anyone in a traditional organic search result. They won because they were present and credible and specific everywhere the question went. So picture two brands of frying pan, roughly the same quality. Brand A ran a gorgeous ad, and that's where their effort stopped. Great ad, but silence everywhere else. And then brand B ran the same kind of ad, but when I went validating, they were there. Their product page actually said all of the things, in their FAQs and in their page copy, and I think they even had some videos on the page and things like that that matched what I was searching for, all the requirements that I had. There were real reviews. There were, independent YouTube, comparisons by people that weren't affiliated just with one brand, or that, weren't stuffed full of affiliate links. There were Reddit comments from really happy customers, not just from, I got this yesterday and I've used it once, but using it for many, many months, and so on and so forth. And so when I asked the AI, it could find them because they left honest, helpful breadcrumbs across every platform. So brand B made my short list, and brand A, the one with the prettier ad, I genuinely cannot tell you the name of it now. It evaporated from my brain the second I started checking because there was really nothing to find. And that's the whole game now. The ad just gets you into the conversation. Whether you survive that fan out decides whether you make the sale. As a side note, anyone who suggests to you that you just need to master one platform, Meta ads, before you try implementing any other marketing platforms for your brand is not helping you right now. Which brings me back to the pajamas. And I did warn you this might get a wee bit personal. But don't worry, I'm not stripping naked on the video here. I bought linen pajamas less than a year ago from a well-known Australian brand, because I'm not going to name them because I'm not in the business of public floggings here. You'd probably know them though. Premium price, premium promise. And this was the second pair from them that has torn a hole just in the middle of the fabric, not even along a seam, after gentle wear, proper, washing and care. and well inside 2 years. In fact, closer to 1 year, from a brand whose entire pitch is quality and longevity. And here's what that does beyond losing my repurchase, which they have comprehensively. It turns me into a problem for them, or potentially turns me into a problem for them in exactly the environment I've just described. Because now, when that AI asks, is this brand's linen any good? Does it actually last? There's a version of me out there. Now, I haven't left negative reviews or comments or anything like that, but potentially that's going to happen. People commenting out there in the public sphere saying no. So I could have become a sub-query that they fail. And a brand can buy all the beautiful ads in the world, but it cannot outspend a reputation for not lasting, because that reputation is now baked into the very research layer that every considered buyer runs before they part with a cent. So premium's not a price point, it's a promise. And the considered buyer just doesn't stop quietly buying when you break it. She actively, findably warns the next person. Remember, she's running that cost per use sum in her head the whole time, and a brand that doesn't last fails it twice, once on her own math, and again in the warning she leaves for anyone who comes after her. Durability, as it turns out, is marketing. The most expensive marketing failure isn't going to be a bad ad. It's a good product that doesn't last. There's a flip side to all of this, and it's the most hopeful part, I think. So remember the kombucha and the yogurt, the two things I'm a complete beginner at. And, these were the two purchases I was excited to make in the last couple of weeks. For those, I wasn't really shopping for a product first. I was shopping for someone to teach me, and I'd spent hours on how-to content before I cared about a single brand. And the brand that eventually won my kombucha money won because its content taught me really clearly, really generously, for free, how to not poison myself making fermented tea. They did not have the prettiest website or the prettiest ads. It was, just so useful to me. And by the time I was ready to buy the kit, they weren't a stranger running an ad at me. They were the helpful expert. They were the Yoda to my Luke Skywalker, who had already earned my trust. So the teaching in that instance was the sale. So if you've got a nervous first timer in your audience, or that there's a high barrier to entry for a product type, selling online, the sort of thing where people really need to ask questions or try it before they buy it, not need, but would prefer. The brand that educates them is going to be the brand that wins them. Content, therefore, isn't a nice to have you get to after the real marketing, or that you might one day do after you've made enough money, doing all of the presumably filling orders or whatever. For that buyer, the content is the marketing. So why don't we get practical? Because I never want to just leave you nodding along or, worrying that you're not doing enough in your business. If that is how your customer buys now, and I promise you it really likely is, there are two moves that matter here, and everything else is detail. Move one, you got to ask your customers the actual questions. You cannot answer those fanned out sub-queries if you don't know what they are. Right now, you're probably guessing at your customer's version of induction and forever chemicals, their specific values, their specific worries, the exact thing that almost stopped them buying, the precise risk they were trying to avoid. And you can't guess your way to this. You have to ask. The brands that win the fan out are working from things like the real language that their customers use to describe these things, the real fears that their real customers have, which is the entire point of running a proper customer intelligence survey. It's the difference between hoping you've covered the right questions and knowing that you have. Incidentally, this is my newest playbook that I have documented and created for, initially for my team, but also for you guys if you want to grab it. Exactly how to run a customer intelligence survey. So very helpfully named the Customer Intelligence Survey Playbook. I'll link to it in the show notes because this one is genuinely move number one that you really need to make, because actually everything downstream from that really depends on it, whether it's from, working out what menu navigation on your website or content and layout on your website, to what should go in your flows, to what is going to be the most important hooks to use in your meta ads, and what needs to go in the consideration content elsewhere, and et cetera, et cetera. And then move number two, once you know the questions, is to publish the answers everywhere, which sounds like a duh answer. But you have to show up like a media company and deliver like a tech company here. The framework, some of you who've been listening to this podcast over the last year might remember me talking about in an earlier episode, and I will fish out the link to that episode and pop it in the show notes for this one as well. You've got to build genuinely useful, findable content across every platform you own, and use smart systems so that you can do it efficiently without a team of 20. You can't just get AI to create this stuff for you. Google's latest core update that just rolled out last month, in a nutshell, essentially favors content that has, a large human element in the creation of it. So I'm sure you've heard the term AI slop. You can't just copy and paste from 100% AI created content and assume that that's going to cut the mustard, as Aussies say, because it won't do the job. But you've got to do it efficiently, right? So the job is to make sure that for every one of those little sub questions that your customers search is about to fan out into, that there is credible, a credible, specific and helpful answer that is also findable from AI when the AI goes looking for it. So yes, it must be on your product page, but it also needs to be elsewhere: YouTube, TikTok, Pinterest, in your blog, on maybe Reddit, or wherever it is that your specific customers go searching, with the right titles and the right captions and the right, optimizations, so that it actually surfaces. You can't skip the unglamorous questions. Things like, is it built to last? What's the real cost per use? You have to be honest about this stuff, because those are exactly the ones that you'll talk your buyer out of the cheaper option and the AI, or the cheaper option that the AI keeps offering. That's not luck. It's a discipline, and it's exactly what I teach in my Search Everywhere optimization playbook as well, which I shall also link in the show notes. Incidentally, there are a few playbooks now. I keep adding to them, but you'll find them on the website, top menu, under growth playbooks. But start with those two right now, knowing the questions and then own the answers everywhere. And if you can do those two things, here's what happens. You stop depending on that meta ad to close the sale, to do all of the work. You start showing up credibly at every single step of that purchase journey that I walked you through earlier. And when your customer opens up that AI and starts pushing back and narrowing down exactly the way I did over the last fortnight with my frying pan and my pajamas and my kombucha and yogurt kits, you're going to be the brand it can find and trust and ultimately recommend. Now, I did eventually buy the frying pan. Here's the lovely bit. The one I chose comes with a multi-century guarantee. It's Australian made, and it has a multi-century guarantee for a frying pan. So one day, my great-great-grandchildren can apparently take it up with them directly if it stops working. And honestly, that is the most persuasive piece of marketing the brand could possibly have, because its durability turned into a promise so bold it answers that cost per use question before I've even asked it. I also bought the kombucha kit, which is currently fermenting something faintly alarming on my kitchen bench. There's a real live science experiment going on in there, but we have bottled our first batch now, and it tastes pretty good. But the point stands, the brand that won my money For that and the yoga kit. It wasn't the one that had the best ads. It was the one that had the most useful, honest, specific, helpful information that taught me what to do every single time that I went looking for truth. That's the whole secret, really. Be findable, be trustworthy, be specific everywhere your customer goes to check. The ad will stop the scroll and get you the click, and it's done its job. The system gets you the sale. And these days, that system is everywhere. If you want to build that system properly, please do start with those two playbooks. As I mentioned, we'll link to them in the show notes, the Customer Intelligence Survey to find the questions and the Search Everywhere Optimization to own the answers. They're the exact two moves in the exact order that I use and my team use with our clients. So I invite you, go claim your spot. That is it for this week's episode. I really hope that you have enjoyed it. If you know of a friend who is also a brand founder that could do with this information, please share it on whichever podcast platform you prefer. And otherwise, I, as always, look forward to being back in your ears this time next week. Bye for now.